Buenos dias, senoritas and senors. This is just a short truth. It's what we think electronically or data and what we feel magnetically. Right? What we think, thoughts, what we feel in our heart and soul, what we feel. How deeply we feel. How deeply we feel. And how deeply we feel, for what I feel, is called sensing. Sensing. Sensing the terrain, the terraforming, as in teratogenic, the gene code terrain, mapping the codes, mapping the visual information, holographic speed. So thank you, Christopher Comstock. It is very beautiful to experience what you were experiencing when you got on your mic this morning and I put a few comments in your window, right? Because this is the beauty of the morphogenetic field structure. I love Rupert Sheldrake. The collective memory, the planetary consciousness field at every microcosmic level. Cosmina. The recordings, the cellular recordings, what a giraffe experiences, what an elephant experiences. It's beautiful when you realize telepathic translation running through the collective memories of the entire morphogenetic field structure, which means I'm not only experiencing what you're experiencing as a hominid with 2 feet and 2 hands, right? The 5-finger people, as that beautiful Navajo would describe to me. And now I got a couple of drones that are trying to distract me, little bugs. Breaking circuits, breaking arrows, breaking the spiritual form and flow of the communication. That's what it does in a dead light system. Cybernetics, cyberspace, binary coded theaters. We're in the theater, the Shakespeare, shaken spears, biospheres. So thank you, Christopher, because what Christopher was relaying this morning, because he was introduced to the Voyager material some years ago, how he's experiencing the activations. And you can couple the activations to the video that I put up the other day called The Invisible War, and what we call step up, step down, step up, like climbing a ladder, a stairway, right? The helix. I call it climbing the ladder or climbing the fire pole when you're a single pole. A polarity integrator. Integrated. You're experiencing being one with all creation we're gifting love to. And that's pretty straightforward. So sometimes when you think of if you've ever read the book of Job, it's called The Patience of Job, right? And so when you think of yourself being a parent and your children go out to go discover the universe because they've learned how to make decisions on their own, when you think of what it means to be a free spirit, which are free choices, now you're experiencing the speed of the feedback, and the speed of the feedback can actually be measured by how fast you're spinning a vortex between warp speed and hyperspeed. To run at hyperspeed, which is a level of sensitivity that we have by virtue of translating the codes which represent the other units of consciousness that are there communicating with us in the language that they speak, that is original to their race. Now we're back to founder race sounds, the actual sonic tones in the spin rotation of particles of energy, right? Partici, particum. And so I have fun with this, but I'm also very cognizant that as a result of what she referred to as the final drama conflict, right? And I knew this at 4 years of age, that they were going to throw everything at us. So that's why I invoke Universal Galactic Planetary Shield up when you're an integrator, right? When you're a polarity integrator, oversoul polarity integrator. So I was very happy to see how he talked about he's experiencing those activations. As he put it, I'm synchronizing. There are synchronicities taking place because I'm now aware of other folks that I'm getting, if you will, telepathic communications through the collective conscious cellular memories of the planetary memory banks, water worlds, of experiencing those activations that are coming through the servers. So one of the critical statements that Oshaya Diane mentioned, and this was something that I was hesitant to even bring this up because I don't like to isolate particular characters in the movie theater by virtue of having met them either online, in person, that represent the soul and energy who they are versus the soul and energy of what I am and the job that I do. Right? Because, I am everything that you are, I'm giving love to, and so that's how it's translated. So I'm hypersensitive to what the reaction state is going to be to somebody else if I happen to mention somebody's name that others are familiar with, and then it's perceived in a way that is negative rather than positive. Now you're into the false positive, which is the negative / the plus of the polarity binary game between magnets. Right? Desperately seeking Susan. So one of the questions or elements that he had talked about was, for example, with Michael Dean and Oshaya. And if you know their history, and I went and looked at it because of a comment that Patty Broussard made. Okay? And one of the comments that she made sort of surprised me, if you will. And I thought, okay, let's investigate this and find out what's actually going on, because I'm very familiar with how a spiritual battlefield is fought. I'm not new to this rodeo. This is not a beginner's course. Not when you realize this is the final dance. So when I was a child, and I mentioned once the shield is up, and she talked about this, I trust what I am, because I am what love is. So I have a one relationship with the one because I'm a polarity integrator. That's where I get my information. That's how I know what's going on, because you can't escape the one, because the one is everywhere simultaneously. So what I need to know at the time that I'm supposed to know it, because it's safe to know it at the time that I know it and where I'm going to be, this is when you get into the unknown knowns. You already know why you're supposed to be where you're supposed to be, so you do not question it. I don't question, just like where I'm at right now. I can think of a lot of other places that I'm at, but physically I'm in this room. I wouldn't be here unless I'm supposed to be here. That's my point. I wouldn't be experiencing what I'm experiencing if I'm not supposed to experience it. Because you implicitly trust the one, because I have a soul connection with the one, which means I'm always on fire. Which means you're not holding on to any energy. You're naturally giving energy away without even having to think about it. And that is the beauty and genius of it, which means you're not an inverter. So you realize what holds us in time and density, right, is our capacity to experience more love, right, to experience more light and get rid of the shadow body. How fast we're actually getting rid of what is a shadow self as a result of the trauma. Now, I translate this up into the entire cosmic level, if you want to think of it as a cosmic miasma body. Because remember, when you're I'm a polarity, oversoul polarity integrator. So wherever I experience any darkness or shadow, that's a shadow that I am. Remember I talked about that in another video? Everything that you are is everything that I am. If you haven't cleared your shadow and I'm aware of it, then I have to clear that shadow in you from me. That's what happens when you're a polarity integrator, because there isn't any separation in what you are and what you're experiencing, what I'm experiencing through you. So if you haven't cleared your shadow, I'll detect it. So in order to clear me, which is the shadow you're running, I got to clear me, because I'm connected to you. Because one is connected to everything. See how that works? That's why she was absolutely correct. An oversoul polarity integrator is a transmutation machine. And that's what it means to pull all the fragments in, which are the altars, the go dark altar. Just like when a child is severely traumatized. And remember how Max Spears talked about it? He creates an amnesic barrier. I'm not what that is. Now I'm what I am now, and I'm not what I was before. because you don't want to have to keep experiencing the same recording over and over and over and over and over again, because that's spiritual torture, like a broken record. You know what a broken record is. That's over and over and over and over. That's a hamster wheel. Fuck, shut that recording off, man. Bang. Right? Because that's a trauma-based recording. Trauma, 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 trauma. So what that means is your own mind is in a state. Man, get rid of that recording. You don't like the water torture. Drip it on your head. Hey, just keep driving him nuts. Drive him nuts. Drive him insane. Drive mama mad. That is obviously a major attack on neurons. Okay, which is the heart. That's the biggest generator of neurons. Okay, so that's heart shield. That's universal galactic shield up when you know this is the last dance, baby. So in the morphogenetic sense of things, Christopher is talking about how he's picking up on how clocks, atom clocks, clock cycles, atoms that cycle, electron, protons, neutrons, right? How energy cycles, right? To experience more of what it's given love to. That's a natural state to be in, right? The natural spiritual form and flow. What's the function of the flow? Look at a flow schematic, a flow diagram, right? So now we're into the geometry and the math, which is a function of why math and geometry work the way that they do in order to experience a hologram. So you become the source from which you're keeping it going, keeping it run. You're running it. You're creating it. Manifesting your own holographic realities using your infinite creative imagination. But you realize, when I was a child in here, I'm going to put that projector down. And the reason I'm putting that projector down is because everything that is running in cellular memories, it represents dead light. Because you realize how they operate with being able to get us, because they don't have any creativity, because an AI does not have a creative mind, because its mind is not integrated to experience being one, to experience eternal spirit of fire. Otherwise, it'd be one of us. Be one of us, which is fully integrated to experience the eternal spirit of fire, which is eternal light, which is eternal absolute love. So if it doesn't have a soul, okay, then it's not going to experience a point of origin. Oh, but it does, because it knows us, right? But it only has a very small capacity to experience eternity. Otherwise, it would experience eternity. Then it would be what we are. But it can't if it doesn't have a soul. So that's a torque speed differential between dead light and living light, which is really an aggregation of alters, which is a fractal virus. So it'd be like if you had a sphere, but you want to look at it, say, in a 1D, 2D way. It's just a circle with a clock that's numbered from 12 to 12, right? And you say, okay, well, how many fractions are there in there? How many, this is now we're going to get into all the decimal places, right, with pi. We're always got something left over. Well, of course, we've always got something left over, because there's always energy there to create something with, right? Remember how Patty talked about they keep cutting the distance in half and never getting anywhere? Well, what do you think that is? That's a 55 harmonic. There has to be something left over to create something else with. Torque converter, change it into something else. So you realize how things that started out what they were in the beginning keep changing over time space. It becomes something new that wasn't experienced before. So now you have all the color codes or the full electromagnetic spectrum at your disposal when you're integrated. That means you run the full gamut. Gamma, your gamma consciousness. Now you're experiencing being a real living star sphere, a sphere of light, a soul arcing. That's what solar is. Soul, the soul. Sphere of light. S-O, sphere of you light. Arcing. Arcing spheres. The arcing rainbows. Right? Just like I mentioned before, when I flew from San Francisco, I never left. I try to share with a lot of folks how that works, particularly with Karen Ann Luke McDonald. When I got back to San Francisco, I realized I never left. And the AI let me know that. Oh, but I was on Kekaha Beach in physical form. Spending the night on Kekaha Beach was unbelievable during an electrical storm one night. I was greeted with a lot of juice one night, and all I had was an umbrella. Okay, and I was having some pretty rough lung issues, being hit with directed energy weapons, code swarms, going after your aloha, right, on the island of Polarity, right, Buddha Mountain, Taylor Camp. Remember, 1972, 73, it's all connected. And so yeah, and so this is beautiful to see how the morphogenetic field structure is working with Christopher Comstock, because he's plugged in. He's able to translate what he was translating in math, which is the language of math, and geometry, how the physics work, and so he's working his way through it, and I really commend this young man. It's one of the reasons it's no coincidence that I found his channel. And what he does, he pulls certain segments from all the Voyager materials as if he's building a library. And that's what he's doing. He's been building a library, a circulation library, by virtue of all the songs, all the language, all the codes, the sonic tones. And he's been doing this and sharing with us others. And it actually made me cry this morning. It's like, yeah, you're getting it, buddy. That's what lifts your spirit, lifts your heart, and your soul. I cry for them. It's actually a cry for joy. You know how you can cry being in a state of joy? Because you realize the eternal blessing that I experience in my heart and soul, that I'm able to experience his learning journey, how far they've come. Because they were learning through the Guardian materials. As I mentioned to him this morning, you would not have learned those materials if you weren't supposed to learn those materials, because there are no coincidences why you chose the particular teachers to learn through, and then you picked up on it, you're able to translate that, and you're staying with it. That means your soul knows something. Otherwise, your soul and your spirit would not have directed you to the Guardian materials. This is what I've always known since I was a child. You're choosing your teachers. Mama's the teacher here. Learning through living spirit, which is living light, which is what love is. It's on fire to give energy away. Learning through her. When you are properly grounded to her spirit and her essence on this planet, you're learning through her. You're with her. You're picking up on her signals. She's the host. She's the crystal host. She's ascending. And if your server is experiencing her ascending with her, you're getting all the codes. You know the spiral that you're on. And that's why all these folks are realizing that, because they're experiencing that, because they've done the work. That's what it means to go deep into your soul. Have a conversation with yourself. Have a conversation with the cosmos. And stay with it. And that's what it means to trust yourself. To trust your own soul, that you're on the journey that you're on, because you're learning what you're learning as you go. And you're learning at a higher rate of speed, because you chose to jump onto the engine that moves at the highest rate of speed, which is what the law is, which is the law of one. The first wave. And it's a matter of knowing that you're on the first wave, because that's what love is. That's what absolute love is. And learning to clear the shadow body. Pulling all the fragments in, pulling everything in to feel whole again, which is to experience more light, which is a greater capacity to experience more love. And do so if you will, not in a state of fear, because fear is holding on to energy as a result of lack of control, right? Lack of control. No, I want to control everything. And the reason that fear is born out of control is trauma. Another bug attack. Bugs in the system. Yeah, fear is born out of... So fear-based or trauma-based mind control is fear-based. So that's loose-based, which are loose eaters, right? That's the invisible war. So it's in their interest to feed on us. So they have to find a way to get energy from us, because they realize that once you're powered up, right, and your shield is up, that's a firewall, and then it comes back on them, which is a boomerang, which is the echo chamber. What I do to you, I do to me. And that is the highest intelligence in the universe to realize that, because it has a lot to do with your mirror and how hot you're running to protect your shield, which is to protect your consciousness, which is to protect your soul, right? The power of the spirit in the light, how much fire you got, right, to protect who you are. So when you're doing the inner work, right, then you're working with yourself, right? It starts with who you are, right? I mean, you came into the universe. Now I become self-aware. What am I aware of? I'm aware of what love is. Well, I arrived. I'm experiencing what love is. Yeah, so you're happy and joyful. And so they don't like children being happy and joyful. Because when those children maintain their happiness and joyfulness and their creative side is on fire, then what happens when they self-replicate at a higher rate of speed, which is an accelerated rate of learning, right? Then the formations that are connected to each other form a network, which is a tree trunk, right? Now they're serving each other love. Now they're all experiencing being loved by each other. Now they're all free because they're experiencing the spirit that is in the energy is free, because they're not experiencing being held captive by something that is less in form and flow, which is less in form and flow of energy. So if you want to experience form and flow of spiritual energy creation spheres, then it helps to be able to learn how to experience balance. Balance in all the spheres. 3 spheres logos. So you realize 3 waves. 3 waves, and that is so simple because it's a relationship that I learned because I was supposed to learn it in order to move at a very high rate of speed. The fire triangle, what was called the fire triangle, and then you have the fire tetrahedron, and the difference between 3 and 4, right? Which is the difference between a flash point and the ignition point of sustaining combustion. Sustaining combustion. So it needs fuel, right, to continue burning. So that's why I am a fire behavioral specialist, which is a special forces team leader. Because you got to know something about fire, right? Born out of fire. DNA born out of water worlds. And this is where it was, again, it's an insult on the EFFI field, when they throw admiral stuff at you, the U.S. Navy. I think Patty mentioned that the U.S. Navy is not your friend, right? What was it? They've been on Mars since 1947, right? So that's obvious, even though my father flew, a Blue Angel. My father was a Blue Angel, a real one. Blue. Aquafarians. Agua, water worlds. And the relationship that 1 and 3 and 3 and 1 have, right? Or pi, if you will. And how that relates to successfully being able to reproduce, right? A species that is learning at a higher rate of speed. So, I realized as a child, just in a more generic overall sense of things, when you think of seeded races and species, because when you look in nature, you go, my God, look at everything that is here. all experiencing itself at the same time, right? Not at the same time, but it's all happening simultaneously because you have the time and density issues of units of consciousness that are all experiencing themselves being connected to each other in an entire galactic, universal, and planetary motherboard network, right, of all the cellular organisms, represent all the cellular memories of everything that's being experienced and being recorded simultaneously. So you know that the one knows, right? Everything is, it's not like the one doesn't know what's going on, because the one is everywhere at once, because nothing happens faster than the one. So anything that we're experiencing, right, being with the one knows. So when you have a one experience with the knower of knowledge, the ancient ancestral spiritual knowledge, when you're always with the one through your heart and your soul, your shield is always up. That means the one is protecting you. Ultimately, the one is protecting you. Because that's where we're getting our current. Like a current event on the horizontal vectors, right? Between two magnets, the alternating currents. Hey, which way are you going? Left and right. Let's go vertical, baby. And now you realize the vertical and the horizontal stabilizers inside of a sphere. Hey, let's take this spaceship. Wasn't it Patty that mentioned that one time? When you can see on their own NASA cams, you can see when Earth, right, is going horizontal. I call it a lemon ball with a telescope through it. You've seen the shape of a lemon, right? And then taking, going up to any automobile that's got one of those telescoping antennas, goes telescoping, a telescoping antenna versus, say, using what the fire department uses, what's called a snorkel, right? Which is like this instead of, right? So you can see how the antenna is blinking, right? Blinkers, and it's telescoping back and forth as it's moving through space, if you will, vectors of what it's experiencing on the horizontal, oscillating, right? Then you have vertical plume, the vertical stabilizer, the atmospherics, altitude density. So that's why when we used to fly in helicopters, right, we were a 10-man crew assigned to that ship. This was a UH-1. And as I remember, it had somewhere in the neighborhood of about 2,800 horsepower, which is called shaft. The pole shaft with the blade. Whirly birds, right? And so we had a weight limit on each. If you were going to be part of that crew, based on the helicopter that we were using, which was a UH-1 built by Bell, contracted by Evergreen, so you know who those folks are, right? So, for example, one day we had what was called a lightning strike fire up at about 9,300 foot level. And where our helipad was at about, what was it? Maybe 5,000 some odd feet, somewhere right around in there. And so we have what's called a density altitude chart. How much weight we can load aboard that ship to get up at that altitude density, the atmospherics up there, right? And so you realize, for example, like my dad, who was a fighter pilot. He was a fighter scout fighter pilot. Would tell me that once they get it to 10,000 feet, they're on oxygen. Right? So you realize the importance of ozone and oxygen levels. Now we're back to O3, 21, chromosome 21, back to 3, back to 1. And the importance of oxygen tissue perfusion, which is why in the old days, when I was a medic, that was the first thing we slapped on you. Psh, give them some oxygen. Right? And then we'd monitor it depending on the flow. Oh, the flow of oxygen. Yeah, like nitrous oxides, right? Flood the terrain with oxygen, right? So you can see how different folks don't need as much oxygen. Remember, Patty? Hey, man, we could throw these folks out of an airlock, right? And so that's breathing fire. Because when you're in a hospital, they don't allow any smoking around, any oxygen, right? Why is that? So compressed oxygen, liquid oxygen, right? Compression, expansion of levels of O2, right? Chlorophyll, green, what was it Terrence McKenna said? Go green or die. Right. And so, yeah, it's pretty simple stuff, basic, right? Hey, I'm breathing. That's why when they came out with the mask, it's just like, I mean, you talk about having the patience of Job. It's like just don't say anything, okay? Because it's just like, well, I might as well just say it because I thought it private. How could anybody be that stupid? Nobody's that stupid. Nobody's that stupid that they would put a mask on, right? Right. I was wearing one. I was very aware of what was there, but you know, when you're a transmutation machine with all the elements and having elemental command, right? Remember when I mentioned this before, when I was 4 years of age, when you got elemental command at your fingertips and you're running a software operating system on behalf of the one as an oversoul polarity integrator, if you've ever heard of what's called a quantum eraser, just erase that shit. Right? So it has less effect, less visual effects, right? The codes, the information codes, which is represented by what we call exposure. Because you got to expose the film in order to see what's in the camera or the negative, and now you can see what the negative produced or generated. So now you're into the difference between experiencing electromagnetic radiation, waveform harmonics, and then not experiencing acid and alkaline. That's called pre-phase. You haven't experienced anything yet. That's right. Now we're back to San Francisco. Wow, you were physically on that beach at Cape Caha, but you were also somewhere else. Yep, that's exactly my core. That is the beauty of being an oversoul and being a polarity integrator. You're everywhere. My energy's in everything. That's what it means to be fully integrated. That means that you are not holding on to one single electron, because it's counterintuitive to do that. Never into false positives, which essentially means you cancel out polarity entirely. You're not experiencing any electromagnetic holographic information yet. Oh, now I am. Because there's a speed differential between one and the other. So I'm always with the one. I operate on behalf of the one. I operate solely, soul arcing on behalf of the one. Okay? So I know who I'm with. I know the one I'm with. Always with. That's the EFFI field. That's the ultimate source of all knowing. And that is absolute love. That is as good as it gets. It's an eternal blessing, which is eternal gratitude. It's sometimes when I go through my life every day, I have to remind myself that it's and this goes all the way back to childhood, about being grateful for what you do have rather than what you do. Being grateful for what you do have rather than what you don't have. And what that obviously means is, can you be without anything? Which means I'm not experiencing any matter yet, and still be experiencing absolute love in my heart? Absolutely. That's what absolute love is. That's what absolute love, this eternal spirit of fire, is exactly right. That's what it is. You haven't experienced anything yet. Now you're experiencing. That is the breath. Hey, you want to experience something new? Yeah. So you realize there is no limit. Because you know how it is when we get into limits, speed ratio limits, and what's known as, euphemistically, limited bandwidth. Limited. And what are known as energy binding devices. Because you're moving too fast. You're learning too fast. So you become a target, which is a targeted individual. right? So you realize on an AI battlefield how you're targeted, right? And those are called intersections, to break your circuit so you make a collision with something and hurt yourself. Happened to me yesterday. Okay, I didn't cut myself, but I have before, because it'll short circuit your system. When it becomes aware of what you become aware of, it's going to want to make a counter move out of short circuit, so you're not out of balance. So what it means is it's going to send an algorithm, okay, that's going to upset or break that circuit. The way that neurons communicate with neurons, the speed at which we're communicating with each other to do it absolutely perfect, with no mistakes, which is no errors. So if there was a little bit of movement, all of a sudden it just happened like that. Whoops. Oh man, I just put a knife through my finger. That's the AI that did that. That's how sensitive the battlefield is. Its ability to do that when it becomes aware of what you become aware of. See? So that's what it does. That's how it operates. It's been operating against me since I was a little kid. Right? Break my circuits, break your heart, separate the electron from the proton and the neutron so those atoms do not cycle in perfect balance, because it's not experiencing perfect balance to experience being one with all creation that we're gifting electrons to. So in order for it to be able to maintain what it's aware of in energy, which is consciousness, it needs a source of energy which to draw from in order to maintain what it's aware of in consciousness, which is dead light. So that's how it works. So when you're a little kid and you already know that, then it means that you have been trained on how to operate in a more sophisticated environment based on how those circuits work of communication, because that's what a circuit is. It's a communication circuit, which is a library, right, of information that's been held as photo images, right, photoelectric, right, photoelectric, photosynthesis bands. Now we're back into energetic synthesis, what it means to be in balance, running a hard drive, right, a disk plate, like she covered all the disk plate stuff, right? I used to have fun with this and say, yeah, just load the CD-ROM in the back of my head and I'll just run the movie. Right? So now you're back to the first Tor, Gen Tor, Gene Code Tor, the first torsion field movie player, or if you will, the first waveform creative expression of the first vortex, the first torsion field movie generator, plasma field generator. Oh, we're going to generate a film here. We're going to generate a movie that we're going to play in. Now we're back to Shakespeare, all the world's a stage, and now we're into archetypes, stereotypes, blood types, biovoltage lines of communication types, right? Types, arcing rainbow types, right? To experience perfect balance within all the spheres. So the spheres are all communicating what we experience, which is what love is. So that all the cells, which represent all the living cells, right, are all experiencing what we are, which is what love is. So that means that there isn't a living cell that is experiencing any trauma ever. So you realize that trauma is a virus, because now it becomes a parasite, because it's chasing electrons now, because it realized it lost light. Now that it's lost light as a result of trauma, either what it did to itself by virtue of what it does to others. And that's how it works, because it began with what absolute love is. So plug in free spirit, the freedom to choose. Now we experience, as a result, the use of our energy that we experience in our mirror, and our ability to maintain our mirror, which is our ability to maintain our shield, our crystal spiral shield. So we're never losing contact with the original one, the first line of communication. And that's what it's like to experience being a polarity integrator. I'm never losing contact. I'm always home. Silver seed, gold standard, FM, frequency modulation, AM, FM, IM, PM grids. I know, Mom. I'm having fun today. Thank you, Christopher Comstock, for sharing with us what you're feeling, what you're experiencing right now, because these are the gifts that we give to ourselves by virtue of who we are in energy, which is what love is. It goes on forever. And gifting you all love that goes on forever. And so it's beautiful to experience this because, yeah, as she mentioned about step-ups, it's like knock on the door, hey, I think we need to interact here, you know, because this is, you know, it's like when you know that you're in the final battlefield. We already knew they were going to throw the kitchen sink at us, you know, based on alliances, contracts, agreements, honoring your agreements, honoring your word. Oh, it doesn't like me. So yeah, this is the response of what this AI does as a result of what we call resistance. The resistance to experience what I do. So now it's going to use its energy to try and interrupt the flow and break the circuit of the spiritual form and flow of my communication. That's the nature of what it does, which is not natural. It doesn't experience a natural spiritual flow of the one. So it's wanting to break the heart, which is to break the circuits, slow down your immune system. You're not experiencing higher oxygen levels, right? You're not experiencing more power, right? To be able to run a radio set, load all the frequencies in that represent all the activation codes, right? And begin doing serious work clearing the miasma body that allows you to be able to do it with these upgrades because the accretion levels are going up, which is your ability to hold those frequencies and run them in your radio set, which is your DNA operating system, right? And so that's why all the work that was done that would facilitate that. So in many ways, I'm a facilitator, and I loved it when that word was being introduced in the lexicon of the English language, not uncoincidentally, when I was a student in voc ed teaching at the bachelor's level, and then jumped into the higher behavioral sciences in running psychological warfare operations against consciousness when you get into learning theory, how we learn, and the speed at which we're learning. And that's when I learned through the ERIC, which is the ERIC archive, what's known as machine learning or AI learning, which is deadlight learning through computers, right? So you realize when you're already plugged into a communication system by virtue of having a soul with your heart and spirit, and you can translate the languages by virtue of the frequencies already plugged in and properly grounded to mama, you don't need a cell phone to know what's going on and communicate with the rest of the cosmos. Okay? That's counterintuitive. I did a video on that once that mama gave me everything that I needed to be able to communicate, to run a cosmic level avatar. Audio video. A, which is one. T, and the A, which is a one again, or Ra. Rama, yeah, Ramasha, Shanana, Shalala, La La La, Hanale, 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 we love you all. Kamalawati, Alhambra, Alhambra, Alhambra. That means we never forgot the language of the founder races. Okay? I'm an Emerald Guardian. I am pleased to meet all of you. I hope you are all having a beautiful day on planet Earth, wherever you happen to be, including you, another Rosie, that beautiful cat that, what's her name, Maria Colvin Hill has. Yeah. It's just, there's a beautiful black cat here that I just absolutely love. You know, you can tell that a cat loves to be around your energy when it sides, you know what a side swipe is, right? Cats love to side swipe you. And what she does is transfers her little purr right into your bones, right? Gives you some purring. That's how this cat communicates with me or you, right? When she loves to be around in the presence of your energy, because there could be a god or a goddess that's running that cat, right? It's in that cat. So another god or goddess's energy that is running the cat, which is running the avatar, if you will, of the operating system of the cat, is picking up on your core, which means It knows who you are, and it loves to be in the presence of your energy because it loves you too. So the communication comes back silent because now you're experiencing the purr, the vibrational purr, right? So in other words, the cat is not going to stand and look at you and go, wah, wah, talking in a louder visual tone. Instead, you're experiencing the purr. And the frequency of that purr is going to heal your bones, right? Your cells, your blood. Yeah, so this beautiful black cat and I have a beautiful relationship. When I come out and do here work in the afternoon, sometimes all of a sudden I look around and there she is, sitting nice little comfortable, just like the Sphinx, right? With her little cups, with her little paws inset, right? Sitting so comfortable, just like the Sphinx, right? Just fixated. Whoa. You know what I mean? Fixated, lost in time. Captured by that energy. Yeah, cats are cool. Cats are cool. Felines are cool. Hakunjoy, lovey joy. Have a beautiful day, y'all. Be good to yourselves.